Today we're going to talk about the kettlebell swing and the 5 things that we commonly see people do wrong in the kettlebell swing. The first things first, the kettlebell swing is a dynamic movement where we're using the hips to pop that kettlebell up, hinging on our arms. We're not lifting and pulling with our back and arms as much. It's more about popping your hips forward and pushing that kettlebell so that it then goes upward. The first thing that we see a lot of people do when they get in their setup, it looks pretty good, right? So they get down, they bend over, hinge, and then they just lose it. Their back is rounded, they're loose in their arms, their legs aren't tight. Just everything just kind of is loose. They're trying to pull and swing, but they don't have that core tight, back flat, shoulders back, tension in the hips. You want to make sure that everything is tight like a loaded spring, ready to go, all right? Keep your back flat, keep your shoulders back and down. Bend at the hips, not the lower back or the upper back. Make sure you're keeping your heels in the ground and popping your hips forward like they're on a slider, forward and backwards. All right, the second thing that we see a lot of people do is, again, good setup. And then as they start to get that swing going, they start to pull really hard with their backs, right? They bend over far and then they're pulling, trying to stand up really fast. And their hips aren't pushing as much as their back is pulling, okay? The fastest thing in the kettlebell swing should be your hips, all right? Your hips should be moving faster than anything else. You shouldn't have to lean over too far because you're keeping that tension throughout your whole body. You pop those hips forward and the kettlebell will fly up, all right? The third thing that we see a lot of people do, and this is pretty common, is they start lifting their arms before their hips have even come forward, all right? This is a combination of 2 things. One, they tend to go low, keeping that kettlebell from actually hitting inside the inner thighs, and then they start to lift their arms while their hips are still back, okay? The hips are supposed to push the kettlebell forward. So if you've already lifted your arms off your hips before your kettlebell comes, or excuse me, before your hips come forward, you're kind of defeating the purpose. Let the kettlebell jump off your hips. Don't pull it off of your hips. All right. One of the most absolute common things that we see is people squatting in their kettlebells. Okay. They think, oh, I'm trying to lift the kettlebell up, so then I have to jump up or stand up in order to get that kettlebell to go upwards. It doesn't work that way. Push forward with your hips. The kettlebell will rise into the air because it's hinging at your shoulders. It's like a perpetual motion machine. That ball on the end goes up because it's hinging, not because it's being lifted. Okay? So remember, back and forth with your hips, push the kettlebell forward, it will go up. No squatting. Okay? The last thing that we see a lot of people do is lift up on their toes. They try to get this full body extension. They feel like, oh, I got to get tall. I got to lift up, pull up with my arms and shoulders to try to get that kettlebell high. Again, same thing. Keep the tension in your body tight. Bend at the hips. Use your glutes and your hamstrings to push that kettlebell forward. Okay? Push forward with your hips. Keep your weight in your heels. If you notice, I can lift my toes up off the ground because all that weight is in my heels. All right, that's it for kettlebell swings. Remember, keep your weight in your heels. Don't go up on your toes. Lift after the kettlebell is jumped off of your hips. Keep your back and shoulders tight and use your hips. All right, the hips are the most powerful part of this movement. Take it easy. Hopefully you got something out of this, and we'll talk to you soon.